ago, and we have one baby daughter who's going to be one in about in 6 days. So Mazel Tov. I was in KPMG for 3.5 years. I opened my accounting practice around 2 years ago. So just very briefly about my practice. We like to call it a digital accounting firm. Basically, like I said in the 60 seconds, everything's done remotely. It's very suitable for people that are short on time and on the go. All the receipts and all your expenses are as you receive them, and you just take a picture on WhatsApp or email them as you go. Everything signed, everything's done remotely. Any meetings that need to be done are done via Zoom. We're very accessible via WhatsApp. That's basically about the firm. So how are you guys able to get more out of your accountant for the same amount of money of what you're paying? So this is it all comes down to a very, very basic idea. The more the accountant knows you, the more he understands your business, the more you're on his radar, the more he's going to be able to help you. Accountant has tens, hundreds of clients. And the more you're in his head and the more he knows what you're up to, the more value he's going to be able to give you. So currently, the chances are that the accountant is the only financial figure in your business. So there's a lot of knowledge there and a lot of added value that he's able to give. And it all comes down to being on his radar and him knowing what's going on with you and what's going on in the business. So very shortly, what will you guys gain from being in his mind and being on his radar? So the first thing is a better tax planning. There's different expenses that you might not know you can submit. And these things, generally speaking, or many times need to be done as they happen or even before they happen for proper documentation. And retroactively, they might not be relevant anymore. And this is money on the floor many times. Another thing regarding tax planning is advancements. You're paying advancements on the go. So if the accountant is aware of what's going on in the business, that can be adjusted better. The second point is business connections. As accountants, we're exposed to many types of business, many different types of, a lot of different things are going on. We know a lot of different people. You never know who your accountant will be able to connect you to. Like the more he knows what you're doing, the more he knows what you're interested in, the more he knows what's going on, he'll be able to make these connections for you. And it's all for the same price. And the last thing is a business and financial support, bookkeeping. But as an accountant, again, because we're exposed to a lot of different businesses and we're just in the sphere where we're able to give advice on things that are not specifically accounting related, just because we've seen them, just because we've seen them being done in other businesses. We're able to give a comparison to what's happening in different businesses, things to avoid because we've seen what's happened in different businesses when they've made moves in different ways. So there's extra and added consulting that the candidate's able to give you again, but he needs to know what's going on. So how do we get this? How do we get this to happen? So the first thing is something called tax estimation. It's called in Hebrew harachot mas. So many accountants do this for their clients for free once or twice a year. But basically what it is, it's a mini report done that sees how the business has done and has a discussion with you about the projections forward. And with this information, the accountant evaluates, have you paid enough tax? Do you need to pay more tax? Are there different tweaks and different things that can be done? So if your accountant hasn't done this for you, or doesn't do this for you, request it. It's worth it. It's very, very important. It saves surprises. You don't want to find yourself you need to pay tax on your income anyway, and you don't want to find yourself a year later when your reports are submitted, suddenly having to pay thousands of shekels, can come to tens of thousands of shekels of tax because your accountant didn't adjust your tax bracket correctly because he wasn't on the ball. So these reports are very, very important if they're not being done already now. In Hebrew, it's called harachot mas. Get your accountant to do it for you. The second thing is periodic meetings. Set a meeting, have a meeting with your accountant once a quarter, once every 6 months. There doesn't need to be a specific reason. You don't know what's going to come out of the meeting. Go for a coffee. In my case, come for a Zoom meeting. Have a phone call. Just talk to him. You don't know what would happen, what connections might be there, what added value he might give you. It's worth it. It could be 15 minutes, half an hour worth it. Could be worth every minute of it. The third thing is, again, because the aim here is to get on the accountant's radar, because it's not nice to say, but because there's could be tens and hundreds of clients, you are fighting for his attention. So anything you can do to be more on his radar and have him think of you more is good. So another thing would be as accountants, we get ongoing updates on tax changes, on different demeanors, different topics. So you can request your accountant to, if there are any updates that he's seen that's relevant to your domain, to let you know, to send it through to you. Now, again, not that you're going to do anything with this information. It's not going to change anything. It's stuff for him to do. But by him knowing that you're on the ball and that you're interested and that you're asking him to keep you in mind, again, that's just keeping you on your radar as one of the businesses that he's more involved in. And the last point is initiate interaction. If anything, big changes, larger changes or smaller changes happen in the business, you don't know what he might have to say for it, what added value he might have for you. You're going to be signing on a big client. You might be losing a big client. You're thinking of going into a new market. You're thinking of firing a worker. You're thinking of hiring a worker. These things, they're not proper accounting, bookkeeping, tax-related things. They don't have to be. But because we see a lot and we're exposed to many businesses, most chances are we'll have what to say, and you're paying anyway. So keep in contact with your accountant, stay on his radar. Next point, 4 end of year tips. We're coming to the end of 2020. There are a few things that we can do to reduce the tax that we're going to be paying. So it's just things that some of these things have to be done before the end of 2020, and if they're not done, it's just money lost. So we'll go through them. The first thing, as we said, is discussed before, tax estimations. So as I said, tax estimation, these harachot mas, are this mini report the accountant does to see if the advancements, the tax that you're paying throughout the year is correct. So regarding mas achnasa, you want to see that what you're paying is as close to what you really need to be paying, to not have surprises in months to come, sometime in 2021. The second thing, and the more important thing, in my opinion, is the bituach leumi. Bituach leumi is also a tax. and 50% of what you're paying out to Bituach Leumi is considered an expense, but it's only considered an expense for 2020 if it's paid in 2020. So it's very important that your accountant does this tax estimation, and if you haven't paid enough Bituach Leumi, pay it before the end of the year. So this can reduce the tax that you'd be paying in general. Point number 2, cash-based reporting. This is a bit of a munach miktsoi, what would be the word? It's a bit of a technical term, but basically a tax-based reporting basically means that you're paying tax and you're paying VAT only when you receive the money, meaning not when you gave the service, only when you receive the money. So if you've given the service and you weren't paid, you're not paying, you don't pay tax for it yet. You only pay when you receive the money. So again, this is relevant only for service providers, because businesses that give products, that sell products, they don't have this privilege. Once they sell the product, they need to pay tax. Doesn't make a difference if they receive the money yet or not. So there's different games that can be played here because we're coming to the end of 2020. We're in December already. So what you would want to do is to reduce the amount of tax that you might have to pay in 2020. You're able to bring expenses forward, meaning if you know in 21 you might have expenses that are for 2020. Let's say you have a retainer for a retainer you're paying for someone to help you with advertising, right? You can ask that supplier to pay him in advance in 2020, and all that expense would be considered an expense for 2020, which will reduce your tax in 2020 instead of it being an expense in 2021. The second thing is if you have a client that you've done service for, and this is very important for skimp to win, who have around 100,000 shekels, and if they pass it, they become from an osek patur to an osek morshe. If you're an osek patur, you know what I'm talking about. So if you're in a gray area, it's worthwhile telling clients, wait, don't pay me yet. Wait until 21 and pay me then. And that way you'll be able to get a bit more out of the osek patur. The last point here is about invoicing. There's another privilege that you have, is that you don't have to invoice the second you receive the money. You have 14 days to invoice. So again, once you receive the money, you have to give a receipt, but you have 14 days to invoice. So if you're borderline, if it makes sense to keep your income this year lower, it might be worth to wait a few days. And it's not relevant yet, but from the 16th of December, it might be worth to wait off with the invoice and only invoice it in 2021. But with this, please be careful, because especially if you're a new business, or if you know that in 2021 you're going to have a very strong year, because by pushing it off, you're just going to be you'll be making expenses, your tax much higher in 21. If you're a new business and you didn't have a lot going on this year. So it needs to be planned carefully, but it's something that you should be aware of. The third thing is recurring expenses. So recurring expenses are basically just money sitting on the floor. Expenses, they're very, very easy to find and to see and to claim them. So every unclaimed expense, you're losing between 30 and 50% of the value of that expense. It's just money that you've lost, that you're going to pay tax on for no reason. So it's like just money that you just took out of your pocket. So these expenses are very simple to find, and it's mamash a chaval, it's mamash a shame not to put them forward. So basically, just make a list of your recurring expenses. If it's internet, electricity, your again, your advertising, your Google ads, whatever it is, make a list of expenses that you know that happen every 3 months, every 6 months, every month. And once you have a list of these expenses, send an email to your bookkeeper, to your accountant, asking them for the something called a supplier bookkeeping card. In Hebrew, it's called karteset hanalat cheshbonot. Basically, each supplier in the bookkeeping system has a card with all the invoices that you receive from that supplier. So once you receive this card, you're able to see, wait, so this expense, I know this expense happened 12 times. So I know I need to see 12 invoices there. So basically you get the card and you just count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You see there's only 8 invoices there. So you know there's a problem. Again, that's money on the floor. Send an email to the supplier, ask him to email you the missing invoices, and that's the end of the story. Very simple. It takes less than 10 minutes, and again, money on the floor. The last point is pension and Keren Ishtalmut. Deposits to your pension and to Keren Ishtalmut, again, this depends on the percent, the specific percentages, are considered an expense in Israel. And it's all a percent of what your income is. There's different brackets. Now, it's considered an expense, and you're only able to do these deposits in the year. Like for 2020, the deposits need to be done in 2020. If they weren't done, it's lost. It's not considered an expense, and you're going to be, and your taxes are going to be higher. So if your accountant still hasn't done this, send him an email, ask him to make the calculations and send you what the appropriate deposit for you will be, and then speak to your insurance agent and see, did I deposit enough? Do I need to deposit more? And make the adjustments. Just one small note on Keren Ishtalmut, it's not really relevant here, but American citizens, Keren Ishtalmut is a very, very problematic thing for you, because in Israel it's considered a tax. You get tax deduction for it, but in the States it's not, and you pay tax for it in the States. So if you have Keren Ishtalmut, speak to your accountant about it. Speak to your American accountant about it, and make a plan, because it's there's an issue there. Helena, how's our timing?
You've got a little bit more time. You're good.
Okay. So just very briefly, I don't know if this is going to be relevant to anyone here. From what I remember, from what I heard from who's with us today, I can't remember hearing this, any salaried employees. Again, salaried employees means that you don't have a tik atzmei, that you're not an independent as well.
I'm salaried, Eitan.
You're salaried? Okay,
yeah.
So this is relevant for you.
I'd love to ask a couple questions actually as well.
Okay, no problem. Do you want to? I'll finish this and then we'll open for questions. So in Israel, you would think that a salaried employee doesn't, generally speaking, doesn't need to give in an annual report. Different countries have different tax arrangements, but salaried employees in Israel don't need to give in an end of year report, because their tax is deducted from their pay slip on a regular basis by the company. That's how it works. But from this system, there's many times you're paying too much tax because things are not calculated correctly, and things are not taken into account in a proper way. So the law is in Israel, a salaried employee is allowed to submit an annual report for a tax return, and you're able to do this up to 6 years back. Okay. So I'm just going to go through 5 reasons. There's many reasons, but I'm just going to go through 5 main reasons that salaried employees may be likely to be entitled to a tax return. I must say that generally speaking, I know I work like this. The check to see if the salaried employee is due a tax return is for free. So it's worth doing. So the first thing would be, if in any time of the past 6 years you changed jobs, you were unemployed for 1 month to a few months, you were on khalat during the year. So the chances are, and very, very high chances, that you're due a tax return. You're due money back from the government. So I'm not going to go into why, because we don't have time for it, but if any of this is relevant to you, look into it. The second thing is changes in personal statuses, in personal status. If you finished an academic studies, if you got a degree from an Israeli institute, if you had a new baby born, if you got divorced, if you have a child with special needs, any of these things, all these things you get tax benefits for, and many times they're not taken into consideration. Not taken into consideration by the company that's paying your salary, either because you didn't update them, or you didn't update them on time, or you did update them but they didn't put it in. It should be checked. Just one note that new child born, that's for men and for women. It's relevant for both. Another situation that this is 100% your due money back is if you worked in 2 workplaces, at least over 2 workplaces in the same at the same time. So if you receive 2 salaries, 2 payslips or more, you're 100% due a tax return. You've overpaid your tax, and this is also if you did a tax coordination at Tiumas. The third thing is additional activities that are not included in the payslip. If you had any losses in while trading shares, if you've sold an apartment or a house and you paid tax, if you're paying for life insurance, if you have a mashkanta and you're paying for life insurance, all these things, there's a very high chance that you're due to receive tax back. And the last thing is donations. In Israel, if you donate to a tax-exempt organization over 180 shekels a year, all your donations together, so you're due a tax deduction of 35% of that value, which is it could be considerable. It adds up. And again, as a salaried employee, you only get this back if you submit an annual report. So those are the few points. Basically, what I'm looking for is regards of clients would be freelancers, entrepreneurs, small business owners. For the tax returns, would be salaried workers, English speakers, any languages. I have a client now that's they're from Colombia. So we had a phone call a couple of weeks ago with their Colombian accountant. So it was a 3-way phone call with me, them, and the Colombian accountant, and they were translating from English. It was quite interesting. And so I'm open for collaborations with insurance agents, real estate agents. There's different things that we can do together. That was me. If anyone has any questions, please.
Eitan, do you want to stop sharing your screen?
Yes. Do I have to?
Yeah.
Also stop it. Hold on. Okay. Firstly, a huge round of applause for Eitan. That was absolutely fantastic. Really, really good. I definitely learned a lot from that. Jeff, you said you had a question. Do you want to take that away?
I've got a couple of questions. So Eitan, I'm sure that there's probably some tax monies that should be coming back at the end of the day. And I understand there's a number of companies that do it, right? So you end up speaking to them. I'm Canadian, and so we're a British colony and all that kind of stuff, where we once were. We deal on the polite, non-aggressive, right? And these people are very aggressive. I mean, they start calling me 18,000 times a day. One of them started independently calling my my CFO, and so I just completely backed off the process. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, at the end of the day, they end up taking a piece of the pie in terms of whatever would come back to you, and I get that. I'd rather work with a CPA or somebody who's, you know, a little bit more legit and a little less, you know, stressful about it. Do you do such things?
Yeah. So basically, the world of tax returns for employees today is dominated by these, you said, aggressive companies. They're not, many times they're not accountants. And they're very, very market, like very aggressive market oriented. Accountants do this as well. It's a service that accountants give. And the downside with doing with one of these big companies, besides the fact that they're super aggressive, is that they work on very, very big numbers. So they don't go into the ins and outs of what you what you're due or what you're not due. They take the general stuff and put it through. But another downside is when submitting a tax return, you also might have to pay tax.
Right.
You also might be due. So these companies, they don't always do the check before. Like if you have someone, an accounting firm doing it for you, they won't submit your request if in the simulation you're due tax.
Correct.
This is a check that we do before. Yeah, that's basically the.
Do you do such things?
That's something that I do. Yeah.
You do it? Yeah.
I did that, yeah.
Okay. Great. And I have another question for you here. When it comes to sort of, you know, wills, estates, people being deceased, etc., right? So you're married here. What I know that I can tell you from Canada is what happens when someone passes away. It's defined by their will completely. I've actually been told here that, you know, let's say for your bituach menalim, your keon ishtalmut, that you don't need a beneficiary attached if you're married, that things are automatically transferred to the spouse in Israel. Is that the case?
I'll answer you because for general knowledge, but this is an answer that should be referred to a lawyer. But from general knowledge, in Israel, there's legal beneficiaries, which would be your wife and kids. So if you haven't allocated anyone specific, so it goes to the technical ones.
To the spouse.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Eitan, thank you very much. I'll reach out.
Pleasure. Cheers.
Any more questions? Leora, and then Daniel.
Hi, Eitan. Thanks for that talk. It was very interesting. I just want to know something. What's the name again that you said, the Karteset?
Karteset Hanalat Cheshbonot.
Hanhalat Cheshbonot. Okay. And you say that if I ask to see that, I should then see that they have like I should be able to see all my electric expenses for the year and.
Correct. So there should be a Karteset, a card, for each one of these suppliers. So if we talk about Chevrat HaChashmal, the electricity, your electricity bill, so there should be a karteset, a card, electricity, and there should be 6. You'll want to see 6.
Yeah.
6 invoices there. If there aren't 6 invoices there, speak to the electricity company, get the invoice, submit it.
Okay. Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Daniel, and then Bridie, and then Karen.
Thank you. Eitan, I have a question. How employers, for example, my wife, can do the tax reduction? How it's made?
So, are you an independent or a salary paid?
I'm salary paid from my company.
From your own company?
Yeah.
Okay. So if you're salary paid, so you submit together.
Okay.
You would be submitting your tax return together as a couple, as a family unit.
Okay. I will be glad to be in contact with you, Eitan.
Bridie.
Hi. Eitan, I have already sent you an email. Hi. As you were speaking, I was like, quick question though. Is there a place, I know that things that are deductible expenses kind of vary between businesses, right? If you're a GAN, then you can claim for toys. If you are social media strategist, you can't claim for toys. But is there, aside from bothering my not so responsive accountant, hopefully soon to be you person, where can I find a list of things that I could claim for this year? Like I have a huge tax bill that I'm facing from last year, and I just want to make sure that this year I've literally done everything I can possibly do.
Okay, so again, like you said, it's very individual for every business. So I'd be happy to discuss this with you in person to understand more what your business is and help you. But for this year, I think you should ASAP get your accountant, and he's a supplier like any other supplier. He's a supplier like any other supplier. You're paying him money. You have to have him. You have to hold him accountable. Yeah. He's like anybody else. Like if you had I don't know, if you got someone to build a website for you, and they were doing a crap job and they weren't responsive, you'd say, "Mister, I'm paying you money. Do a good job. I'll see you later." Sure. He's a supplier like any other supplier. Have him accountable. Sit him down for a conversation and get him to help you. But like I said, I'll be happy to help you as well.
Thank you.
May I comment about what Eitan, or no?
Yeah.
I already wrote my accountant. I want a meeting.
Karen.
Hi. Okay. First, I want to say, Eitan, that I was so impressed, and having moved here 2 years ago and like being through my slew of accountants, and it's just, you know, it can be a nightmare here, and you just made things so clear and amazing. And yeah, I'm also in the what to do now bucket. So I had a quick question, and if it's like too long to answer, we could take this offline as well. But you mentioned that Karen Hishtelmud for US citizens is problematic. I am a salaried employer of my own company in Israel. Is it still problematic for me because that's my status?
Well, you're receiving a salary now?
For my own company in Israel, correct? I'm
from your own company in Israel.
Yeah.
And it's borderline. It needs to be.
Okay.
It's not that simple.
Because I didn't set up an Hishtelmud yet, but if you said, you know,
I
should make a decision by the end of the year, right?
Do you have an American CPA that's helping you?
I do, but he's kind of confused as to what's going on with. He doesn't understand anything to do with Israel, so
it would be an idea to get a CPA who is Israeli that does American tax. Because there's a lot of things that are different here. I'll just give you one small example because we're discussing it. From what I know, in the States, business lunches are considered an expense. In Israel, business lunches are not considered an expense. So for that reason, you probably won't be submitting your business lunches to your Israeli accountant, and the report would be based on that. And that report you're just going to send to your American accountant, and your American accountant, if you didn't know the information that I just gave you, won't add your business lunches back in there.
Well, everything for me is, well, we can take this offline, but everything for me is done through Israel. I have a US business, but I'm closing it at the end of the year, and everything is going to be here. So I wonder, just as like a, you know, an owner of a Israeli business, but just being American, is it still an issue? But we can
discuss it.
Okay.
Any more, Deborah? This is easy.
Yeah, that was a great presentation because it was all about how to save money. Yay. So my first question is just confirming 6 years back for employees, if you have life insurance on the mortgage, new baby, special needs kids, that's 6 years back. Is that right?
Everything's 6 years back.
Okay. And what is that called when you want to work with your accountant on getting those things?
החזר מס.
החזר מס? Okay. All right. Thank you so much.
Now, if you're a salaried worker and also an independent, it's not relevant because once you have both those together, you're submitting an annual report anyway. It's
No, I'm
only
talking about my husband who's employed.
but when you submit an annual report, you're submitting it as a family unit.
Okay. So it's not relevant?
So it's not relevant because all that should be taken into account already in your annual report that you're submitting as a family unit.
Okay, so since I'm self-employed, I can't go back 6 years to get that?
If you're self-employed, you can go back 6 years, but we're going under assumption that the accountant that submitted your reports put everything that he was meant to put in to save you tax money. Again, if we're talking about the life insurance here, if he didn't submit it, he's still able to submit it now. He can do what's called דוח מתקן. So if there's any of the things that I mentioned are relevant to you and you know that the accountant isn't aware of them, let him know.
Okay, thank you.
Because he's still able to do the דוח מתקן.
Any more questions? Okay, I have a very, very quick question and then I promise we'll move forward. Eitan, firstly, that was absolutely fantastic. I've never had so many questions from an accountant speak. So really, Carla Cavall, it was absolutely brilliant. I know it was really, really great. My only question is I'm paying money into my Karen Stammer and I keep upping it. Do I need to liaise between my accountant and my insurance guy that they know that it's upping and that they know what's going on? Does that make sense?
So when you say you're upping it, you're upping
I'm
your
putting
monthly.
money into it, yeah. Like every month I'm putting, yeah.
So it's you look at it as on a yearly basis. So it doesn't make a difference if yes. So you want to know that at the end of the year you've put in the maximum that you're able to put in to receive the tax benefits.
Like an invoice with everything that I put in, and then I send that to my accountant.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Okay.
Yeah, but it's important to before the end of the year to make sure to get the figures from your accountant. Ask him to ask your accountant, him or she, of course. Please do the calculation for me. What's the maximum? What's the maximum amount I should be depositing to my Keren Ishtalmut and to my pension to get the maximum tax benefit? Please calculate that for me, and then go to your Keren Ishtalmut and pension and see if you've deposited enough. And if not, deposit more.
Okay, thank you. That's super helpful. I really, really appreciate that. Okay, this has been incredible. I have a lot to think about. I feel like we all do possibly now. I'm now going to put you into breakout rooms for the second time. It's now 11:25, so I'll bring you out at about 11:35. Like I said, again, there will be, please God, one more breakout room. It'll be a short one, but we will do a third one. So again, if there's anybody you want to speak to, you can still tell me. It's okay. It is not too late. So I'm breaking you out. She says, oh, I love it when people leave half with you. Oh, okay, it's fine. It's okay. We're good. We're good. Okay, beautiful. Can I sing a song now whilst you all do it? Yeah. I have no idea how you do from the feedback on the first one. Oh, hold on.